in fact, we'll come over to you rather than the presentation from the front. Yeah, it's probably best, isn't it? So I'm Andrew Spence, by the way. I look after solution consulting at Sage. Adam and Ben. So Adam's from Sage and Ben to PwC. So we might have a couple more. Have we got any more? No, that's a lot.
Something called coffee break.
Yeah, that was the last session was expenses on.
Yeah, it was the 5 minutes. You see the scratch marks on the floor as it was being pulled off.
So what we want to talk about today is making tax digital. But I thought I'd just do a little bit of introductions to who we are. Do you guys know Sage? Are you Sage users at all?
No Sage, but never used it.
Right, but you know it. So, I mean, obviously in the UK, most people know us for small business accounting. So Sage 50 has been our sort of historic starting point as a business. But actually, Sage is the second largest technology company in the UK. We also look after companies, mid-sized enterprises as well. So we've got a global system called Enterprise Management, which is a full ERP system. So we take people all the way from startup businesses on Sage 50 all the way through to companies like Renishaw, Flybe, those type of organisations use our systems as well for both managing their finance and accounting, but also managing all of their supply chain and manufacturing and whatever it is they do. So it's a full ERP. We also do HR as well, so we've got HR systems. So we are a much broader organisation than most people would recognise us for. And I think over the last 4 or 5 years, as a business, we've changed dramatically from being a very regional organisation. Obviously, UK is our home, but very much a regional organisation with each region very much independent. Over the last 4 years, we've changed to a global organisation, so we now have a single way of working around the world, and we have global products. And enterprise management is one of our global products for managing medium-sized businesses. So we've been through a big transformation ourselves, and what we're trying to bring to the market is the global scale of our business, with 13,000 employees, a global business, but very much focused on small to medium-sized businesses. So businesses up to around about 500 million, 600 million would typically be sort of the range of businesses that we're talking to. So we're not BTs and BPs of this world. They're not typically our customers. So very much focused on providing that global scale, but for medium-sized businesses. So this session is really all about, as you know, it's about the impending making tax digital. So we've got Adam looks after, for the whole of Sage, Adam looks after ensuring that all of our products are compliant. So he's got a big job on, particularly with making tax digital, to make sure that all of our products are compliant, but also similar things are happening in other countries around the world as well. And Ben from PwC provides, I guess, tax consultancy and also strategy consultancy as well. So what we wanted to do today was between Ben and Adam, really just look at what are the implications for businesses, what do we need to be thinking about, and very much make this a discussion rather than a presentation, but more of a discussion. But I know that Adam and Ben were just going to give their views on what making tax digital is, the implications are for businesses, and some of the learnings that particularly Ben has seen with his clients. So why don't we kick off, first of all, with Adam, if you want to just give us a little bit of insight as to what making tax digital is and the implications for organisations.
Yes.
Come and join us. Have a seat.
Crazy time.
There's more. Please do come in.
Okay.
Making tax digital. We're making it more intimate. If you want to, Jay, do you want to just move around a bit? Sorry, what? Do you want to just come and be a bit closer rather than?
I'll come and stand over here.
So please start thinking of questions, because Adam and Ben are only going to literally do 5-10 minutes, just a little bit more. We wanted to make this much more of a bit of free consulting, actually. So please do think of questions. We want to make this more of a discussion rather than a presentation, as it were. But
we are going to get Adam to present first of all, so go for
Well,
it.
present, talk, ramble. I apologise. UK's MTD, to me, is kind of part of the global trend. So I look, as we said, across all the world. We've got countries like Spain that are moving to real-time reporting of invoices, SII as they call it there. We've got countries, well, France not so long ago, Hungary recently, that are moving to SAFT, standard audit files, annual submission of just about everything to the tax return, tax authorities. And then you've got the UK, the Gulf states that are moving to purely digital reporting of taxes, most of them starting with VAT. But there's a digital trend wherever way you look. There's also a convergence. So if you look at Poland at the moment, they've announced they're going to get rid of the quarterly VAT return because they're just going to rely on real-time reporting and tax audit files. Whether the UK will get to that, I had a lot of discussions with HMRC. They don't have any plans to. But what they are doing is using their knowledge, their history, and taking information that they can analyse in real time. In real time as they receive the information. So instead of the old 12 months and kind of 11 months and 28 days, they knock on the door and say, we're going to start doing an investigation for you because they've got to notify you within 12 months of submitting a return. They're now able to understand much earlier if somebody's tax return doesn't match the norm. And that might be because they think somebody's actually underclaimed, or it might be because they've overclaimed, or it might be because they think there's identity fraud, or many other reasons. They're also using this to power a lot of the office statistics and a lot of the analysis that goes into future planning. But it all starts with they need the information in digital format. But they've gone one step further because they said, yeah, everybody already logs on. I think it's like 98% of VAT returns in the UK are through the VAT gateway today. But less than 50% of those are sent electronically. It's something like 30%, I think, globally, and 50% in the small to mid-market area, that people are using software to prepare the VAT return. What was mainly happening was people had spreadsheets, had backs of the envelopes, worked it all out, typed it onto a website. HMRC, working with other parts of the government, wanted to say, let's drive digital Britain. And that's very much where the benefit comes. If everybody has digital records that are all integrated, yes, there's a bit of a pain and a hump to get through to that point, but then it enables a whole digital economy, and I can wax lyrically about the benefits of machine learning and AI and analytics and all of this stuff. But it's really about when you join things together, you can build processes that are repeatable, that are automated. It takes a lot of time out of the process. It's something like 20% of small businesses' time is on admin. As you get to big enterprises, how do you classify admin varies? Same as profit. My profit's not your profit, however we calculate it. But there's a lot of time spent on taking data from one system, reformatting it, putting it into another system. Swivel chair integration. And the whole MTD journey is designed to take that out. So what does it actually mean? You start with your primary VAT record. What is that? In most cases, that's a VAT invoice. If you're doing some sort of end-of-period calculation, it's where you do that end-of-period calculation. Partial exemption, for example. Any of them. Marginal rate. Once you've got that, MTD says you can't manually re-enter the data. Your data's got to flow from one place to another to another. That can be in one system. Hallelujah. Nice and easy. Not the real world for most businesses. Or it can be through integrations. Integration means electronic integration. You can email a file across. You can create a file, put it on a CD, tie it to a pigeon flies across, but it's still digital. There's no manual rekeying. There is this soft landing that some people have said, great, we don't need to get ready till April 2020. Well, that's only there as kind of the exemption. It's there if you're not quite ready, and it's not there for actually putting data into the software that does your 9-box VAT return. So you've got to take data into the system that does your VAT return electronically, and you can't manually rekey that, even during soft landing. But for the rest of it, it is, you've got a small introduction period, but really get ready now to integrate stuff, because that's what the law says you've got to do. And by the way, there should be a whole lot of other stuff that's easier as a result. But it doesn't mean if you've got old systems, you've got to upgrade them. If you've got systems today that you don't quite understand how the spaghetti works, you've got to document it and plan it. And quite often that means unravelling stuff that's been built layer on layer on layer on layer, history, and then replacing it with something that actually meets today's needs. That's really the 5-minute preamble I was going to give.
So I think what Adam and I have been talking about, and Ben as well, is that this is actually an opportunity to be more of a catalyst for organisations to think about how are we managing our finance, how are our finance systems operating. I'm in the sales part of Sage, and I go into companies all the time, as does Jen. And most companies that we talk to say everything's on spreadsheets, multiple systems, can't get visibility. That's every single finance team that we go and speak to. That is the common refrain. Making tax digital is just another thing that I think gives us an opportunity to say, why are we still using these spreadsheets? Why is our system of record split across so many different systems? Actually, this is a great catalyst to say, let's be a bit more ambitious than just automating, our tax return. It's an opportunity to say, actually, let's look at the way that we run our finance organisation and the systems that underpin that. I'm going to get you guys to all introduce yourselves in a minute, and we'll do some questions around. Sorry, Adam.
I was just going to add one thing that I forgot to mention, because some of the discussions we've had with HMRC and some of the ministers, spreadsheets are perfectly legal, and even under MTD. A spreadsheet is an electronic system. The formulas between cells counts as a digital link, so you can't copy and paste a value, you've got to use formulas. They are looking at changing the definition, probably around 2021, of what is a permitted system, so that it must be auditable and preserve the records. Now, preserving the records, you've got something called anti-fraud law in France. A lot of countries are going similar to prove that no tampering. At that point, you've got to put so many macros into a spreadsheet and prove version control, so you're using something like SharePoint for your versions, that even a standard spreadsheet almost fails to meet where they're planning to go. So that might be a little bit of insight that even if you say you're going to use spreadsheets today, they are very much a short-term solution.
Ben, could you just give us a bit of insight from your work with your clients as to how ready they are and some of the challenges that are there?
Yeah, I guess so. I advise clients across the whole space around tax and improving processes, and fundamentally, MTD has been the prime topic of conversation for the last 6 months. Mainly because I think clients are trying to understand what it actually means, because HMRC hasn't exactly been forthcoming in telling clients around what the requirements mean, etc., etc. And as we've been talking to those clients, it's sort of reiterating the message, yes, there's an immediate need to do something for next year in terms of just looking at your VAT process, but this really asks the big question around how do you as an organisation handle data and information for tax. Certainly if you're a multinational, there is just continuing demands on getting information out of your systems, and tax processes have been historically very, very good at being reactive. We'll let the accounting systems deal with it, we'll take it out, we'll do some fancy things to it, and then we'll send it on correctly. That is changing. And fundamentally what that means here in the UK is that clients now need to change their VAT process because of this external driver. And I think those clients sort of fall into two camps really. Half of them are just so focused on what needs to be done in 19, and they just want to get over that initial hurdle of being able to submit information from their software or their Excel spreadsheets over to HMRC by this sort of API link into HMRC, and that's all they really care about, that they're actually losing sight on what the bigger challenge is, which is around digital linking and where this could go in the future. The other part of clients are saying, well actually this is the opportunity that I've really been waiting for, to actually look at my VAT processes and think, how do I actually improve this? It's not just looking at your UK process, right? Because you don't want to do something just for the UK stuff. If you've got VAT processes across the globe, if you're going to try and standardise it and get more out of technology, you want to get a return on your investment as well. So it's about looking at your whole indirect tax operating model as well. So that's sort of where clients have fallen into that camp. And then even going sort of to the next step, which is in the UK, is making tax digital is a policy HMRC have been wanting to bring in. They wanted to bring it in across all taxes because of restraints. They started with that. They've made it very, very clear that from 2020, it's not just going to be VAT, it's going to be other taxes that can start to get involved in this. And also, what they ask for from VAT will start to change and get sophisticated. So obviously we just talked about how that might change in the future. We don't know exactly what that looks like, but we can work off trends going forward. So the big thing for me really is making sure that clients are aware about this and that they're looking at those processes and working out, what is it they want to do? Is it just a conversation about compliance for 19? Is it about enhancing those processes that they've got in place at the moment so that they can meet the 19 and also then get through the soft landing of the 20? Or is this the right time to say, we need to transform what we're doing for tax? This is the right opportunity to do so. We've got enough time to do it. Let's really focus on what do we want out of our accounting systems. Do we need software in place to be able to help our tax processes work? So that's kind of what we're seeing from clients at the moment in terms of what they want to do. Finally, I guess I'll just touch on, if you look at it fundamentally, the three requirements are around having your digital records in place, having your link to HMRC so you can submit your information, and then the third one, which is around the digital linkage, which is where you've got multiple systems, multiple sources of data and being able to connect those together. That third one is where most clients are struggling to get their head around as to what they need to do, because that's where the real sort of concern is, because certainly sophisticated, the more complex clients, they've got the multiple platforms, they've got different accounting schemes going in, they've got adjustments going into that. All of a sudden, you're more and more restricted by managing it as a manual process in Excel, and that's where the real challenge is for clients.
Excellent, thank you, Ben. So, as I said, we didn't want this to be just a talk and chalk and you guys will sit there and listen. This is an opportunity, particularly as we're in such an intimate setting, to ask you to get involved and ask some questions. So, could I start by going around the room and to just getting you to introduce yourselves, name, what you do, and what organisation you work for, so everyone knows who that is. And then I would like to open it up for questions. I will pick on people, but I'd prefer it if you volunteered some questions for each other as much as for Ben and for Adam as well. Would you like to, our newest member of the group?
Yes, sorry, I just need to...
No problem.
I'm Aga Nowak, and I'm currently working on 2 startups. One is based around cryptocurrencies, and the other one is education. The first one is already up and running, and the education was still at the point of raising money and capital.
And your role within those?
I'm a finance director for both. I'm just managing everything and making sure everything's running smoothly and we have enough to run us through 18 months and so on.
Cryptocurrencies. I've just finished watching Startup, all about cryptocurrencies, so that's a different story. Thank you very much.
Yes, my name is Sara. I work for Senso. Senso is a Finnish company and also a startup. We offer data analytics for real estate. On the sales side, but it's very interesting for me and for us because we interface a lot with the sales, CFO group, just to understand, what the real concerns and needs are for the CFO as they participate in the conference.
Great, thank you.
Valerie Giovanni, I'm the VP Group Finance for Fox, Channels, Fox, and National Geographic. Here in UK we have the headquarters for Europe and Africa. So we are part of a multinational company. Our parent company is 21st Century Fox.
Okay, I think we all know them. Bruce, do you just want to say hello?
Hello, I'm Bruce. I'm part of the Sage Enterprise team, so I'm here really in support of my colleagues on the Making Patch Digital Initiative. If there's anything you'd like to know after this, then I'll leave business cards here and hopefully you can make contact and we'll make sure that the information to you.
Thanks, Bruce.
Hi, I'm John Andrew. I have my own consulting business, mainly working with owner-managed multinationals. So sometimes with quite small-scale operations in the UK, but sometimes larger. I have a background of being something of a tax specialist in earlier years.
I'm Steve Thayer, I'm the head of finance at a company called Foresight Group, so we're a private equity infrastructure asset manager. Spent mainly on the infrastructure side is solar. We're one of the big managers in the UK of solar farms. We have a mixed investor base of retail and institutional and retail side. We manage venture capital trust EI schemes, property products. On the institutional side, mainly structured and GPLP structures, various institutional investors across Europe.
Good morning, Bob States. I'm Executive Vice President and Chief Financial Officer from ABC Omega in Buffalo, New York. And I'm here in the UK on business, and this is my third CFO Rising conference, the first one in the UK, the previous one in San Francisco.
Okay, welcome.
Thank you.
Jen?
Hi, I'm Jen. I'm on the sales team at Sage, and a little like Bruce here to chat and answer any questions.
Hi, I'm Nikki. I work at Amnesty International, and yeah, we do VAT.
We know. Excellent. And would you just quickly introduce yourselves as you're sitting around the table as well?
I'm Matthew at Sage. I'll be writing a kind of a report or a guide around this, so this is all going to help me do it. Yeah.
Okay, so before I pick on anyone, has anyone got any, from what you've heard so far, have you got any observations, any questions, any advice that you'd just like to put out there to the group, and we can start with that, otherwise I'll have to pick on people. So has anyone got a burning question about this subject, or anything else actually to do with finance systems as well?
And just mention that that's an ambition plan to go fully digital in a year and a half. Don't we think it's just going from zero to hero? It's not ambitious, it's more than ambitious. Because, like we said, we rely a lot on spreadsheets, there are exceptions. If I think about my company, I have 3 legal entity group in VAT, where one company is not operating here in UK, but still is a UK-based company. Another one is an USD company, and another one is a UK operation company. So there are a lot of exceptions and a lot of different VAT rulings that we have to, and VAT reports that we have to provide, depending on which kind of territory we operate, in which kind of territory we operate.
So you think it's a big step?
Yeah.
And that's for a large organisation.
Yeah.
I work with different size organisations. The largest ones generally are more into systems which are possibly cloud-based already. The systems providers are going to do a lot of the work in making this kind of thing happen. But then when you get lower down the size scale, you're working with people who have much more spreadsheet-based systems, or there's much more sort of manual intervention before something like a VAT return would go in.
Yeah.
And it's not at all clear how that's really going to work. If someone says you need to throw out what you currently have that works and replace it with something you're unfamiliar with, that's not an easy thing for them to go down.
So I was going to comment on, of the many VAT schemes that exist, the HMRC's mandation is only for the VAT 100, the standard UK VAT return. So if you're doing things like MOS or any of the other schemes and the other returns, they are not falling within the MTD at the moment. Now, I think it's a missed opportunity not to digitise everything at the same time, otherwise you're just going to have ongoing costs. But in terms of the barriers that you've got to overcome, it's the digital record keeping. I think most people have digital records. If you say a spreadsheet's a digital record, the digital link, which is the hardest bit, and then the API enablement, well, we're in the software industry, that's what we're going to fix. And there's already vendors out there that have said, well, we're putting a plug-in for a spreadsheet. But you've then got to manipulate your spreadsheet so that the cells are in the right place. It's actually not that hard. It's the 9 boxes of your VAT return plus your VAT ID, etc. This is about 15 cells you've just got to put a formula across. So digital linking is the hardest bit. And what this really means is just say, put in a process that is repeatable. And repeatable process has been a mantra for, well, I started management consulting 30 years ago, and we were talking about it then, and I don't think it was new at that point. So, is it new? No. Is it a bit of a stick? Yes. Is there a carrot there? Yes. Is the UK unique? Definitely not.
Can I just ask, and it's a point that Ben made, this is should be more about digital transformation in finance organisation, or in fact your organisation more generally. Do you see any benefits, and this is to everyone, do you see any benefits outside of being able to submit your tax return, of moving away from those spreadsheets and the systems that you've currently got to a fully integrated, proper, robust finance system?
So I'll be spending hours and days on preparing spreadsheets, so to provide the 9 different boxes.
Yeah.
So absolutely. But what I say is just the time frame is really short. As I said, we're moving from 0 to here.
Yeah.
And there is nothing in the middle. Like the digital link, we have an extremely highly secure system, and the gatekeeper in US. How do we deal with that?
Yes. So are you on US-based systems, or is it effectively spreadsheets but held in some secure system that's managed by the US? What's the sort of format?
The systems are in Europe, based here, but all the accesses are managed in the US.
Yeah.
So simply, somebody is sleeping now in US. So if I have to get the access to the system, there is nobody.
I think that's sort of like one of those challenges where it's really, organisations have to really fully understand what their requirements are out of the system to be able to do something. And I completely agree with you. It's HMRC have put this thing in that's affecting every single business, all the way down from a sole trader all the way up to your biggest multinational. And depending on where you are, it's a different kind of pain. And I know some very large FTSE organisations that will not be ready even by 2020 with their digital linkage, because they've got 50, 60 different ERP systems, they've got stuff locked down, they've got summary data going in rather than transactional data, and they've already come out and said, we are not going to be compliant by 2020. We can do the API, we know that the records are there somewhere, but in terms of that digital linkage journey, we're not going to be compliant. However, what they've said is that we know that we have to do something about this. Even if we're not going to be compliant for 2020, we need to start on this journey. So what they're doing is, rather than sort of like rushing in to do something just for the UK, is fundamentally redefining what are their requirements as a tax function to be able to meet all of these things, and trying to build a more strict. They've got the tactical solutions going on in the background, but what is their strategic solution that they want to do? And this is where I think the biggest challenge is to make sure that within an organisation that IT, that finance, that tax are all joined up and they can really understand what these requirements are and what they mean. Because I've worked on finance transformations in the past where tax would want stuff to be put into the system and they go, well, it's not fit with our global standard, we don't want to do it. Where are the, show me the regulations that I need to do this? And so in the past they've sort of been brushed away and they've just had to deal with it and get on with it, and then tax have always had a very, oh well, every time we go for any kind of change we don't need to do anything about it, we'll just get on in the corner by ourselves and sort it all out. That has to change going forward, and whether that's a big organisation or a smaller organisation, people need to appreciate what these different demands are.
Are there penalties for not complying in 2020?
So fundamentally there'll be, in 19 there will be penalties in place, because unless you have your linkage to HMRC, you won't be able to submit your VAT return, so there'll be penalties there. The penalty regime around the digital linkage is one thing that we've been trying to push for more and more information around it, because it's actually how are HMRC going to, because they won't have oversight of the digital linkage until they come out and have a look at your VAT return process. So that's one of the areas where we've been trying to sort of push to find out, well, actually how they're going to start to audit some of this stuff. And
So what they'll see, as long as they get the link and the files or whatever, they would have to assume that everybody's compliant, unless they do some sort of sample testing or get some sort of exception reporting or something.
Yeah, and they'll do some statistical sampling. Some people will be unlucky.
Yeah.
And they'll come out. But even there's no requirement in the legislation for an audit trail. So if you're allowed to send a file from one system to another and import it, how do you prove you didn't manually rekey it? There it isn't. I mean, I've had this discussion at some senior levels, and it's an impossible bit of legislation to actually audit, because if somebody says, here's a process that the Word document with the process on is dated yesterday, how do you prove that that wasn't the operating procedure that's only just been documented? You can't. So there are gaps and loopholes, but the penalty regime is the first time you fail to comply it's a slap on the wrist. If I remember, second time round, it's 5% of the underpayment of any VAT that's... So when they calculate the correct amount of VAT. But if you haven't had a digital link, it's not clear whether they'll say it's 5% of your total VAT due or 5% of any discrepancy. As you said, it's very unclear.
So
And
if
then
they
it
come
goes
out
up,
and
it
if they had
accelerates
to come out
quickly.
and audit you and find that you don't have this digital link, then
Yeah.
they might be able to fine you a
Yeah.
percent,
On the
5%
second,
of
yeah,
on the second.
yeah.
Presumably they would have to show some loss of VAT or something like that.
Well,
if you're getting the right number, you
Mm.
just, even if you rekeyed something in the middle, if you rekeyed the right number, there is no error.
that's what we're
Should
saying. We
there
don't
be
know
loss of that?
whether the 5% will be on the VAT error, or they'll say you didn't have a digital link, therefore the whole submission is invalid, therefore it's 5% of your total VAT paid. Different people at HMRC are telling me different things. We're waiting for an update to the penalty VAT notice.
So, just out of interest, what do you? I mean, both of you mentioned there that your own business is seeing this as a mountain to climb, and you're saying some of your clients are seeing it as a mountain to climb. So, what are you doing? I'd be interested as to kind of what plans you have in place, because you're going to have to do it. So, have you thought about it, or have you advised any of your clients on, well, this is what I think you should do? Any
Yeah,
insights?
I haven't been asked to advise anyone on it.
Yeah.
It's more me feeling that this is something that they need to be doing,
Yeah.
and I don't know always whether they're doing it. So there are different types of situations where I'm closer or further away to actually getting involved with this. But as I say, I see it as perhaps naively less of a problem where people do have something like a cloud-based system already that they're using, that basically once the data goes in, that's it. It's going to remain digital and flow its way through and automatically be fed into HMRC. It's more the people where maybe some of the system is working like that, maybe the transactional volumes are working like that, but then anything extra like partial exemption methods and all these bits that are done at the quarter end or at the year end, all of that is separate and it's often spreadsheets, and then someone manually keys the result of the spreadsheets into the cloud-based system. And when I see something like that, I'm like, okay, well, what are they supposed to do now? They now need to enhance the cloud-based system to take in their partial exemption method, which may be a bespoke method. I don't see the cloud-based provider doing that. So how are they going to deal with that?
So the way the VAT notice says you've got to deal with that, to go back to what HMRC are expecting, is that's an adjustment that you do at the period end.
Right.
So the primary entry is the manual entry of the total you calculate in the spreadsheet.
Okay. And that's
So
okay.
that's good. But if you look at some of the, and I forget which the legislation, but there's some VAT requirements where you've got to prorate VAT at the transaction level.
Mhm.
If you've got to do it at the transaction level under legislation, that's where you've got the real problem. I mean, what I'm advising clients is if you've got partial exemption, if you're on a marginal scheme, something like that, if you're fuel surcharge, you're doing a period end calculation or a lump sum calculation, attach the spreadsheet to the journal where you post it. And that is effectively a digital record with supporting documents, in the same way that you'd normally trace from an invoice through to the primary posting into the nominal ledger. The digital link is going to be the most painful bit. But you saying people aren't ready, this is one of those hair back of my neck moments, because I ran Year 2K, I ran GDPR. This has been, HMRC pretty much said what was going to happen 2-3 years ago. And although they said, well, income tax, we'll let it slip, VAT, the date hasn't shifted at all. So, businesses have already had a few years to prepare. Is this a case of people were hoping it would not happen? Is it that the message hasn't gone out, which is part of what we're concerned about, because businesses aren't ready and now they're in a final sprint? I'd be really curious to know, did you know about this a year or 2 years ago?
We did, but it's difficult to know what we have to do if they don't deliver any guidelines. This is the point. We're debating if the 5% is on the total or
Yeah.
on
So
claims.
You'd actually look at and 5% is only for the second. I think it goes up to 20% for the third and 100% for the fourth penalty. It accelerates pretty scarily. But would you look at it as a cost of compliance? Is it cheaper to pay the fine than it is to change the system?
Yeah, at the moment we're kind of in a situation that Ben explained at the very beginning, where let's try to go through the first step of 2019 and then let's see what we have to do for 2020. But as a corporation, obviously, we're trying to manage this as an expense. Because we know we're not going to be ready. So we're going to get the fund. We're partnering with Deloitte, but it's also, there is not software out there, so not approved software at the moment that we could use. Because again, we don't know the standard.
So I think you make a really good point, and I think the key thing to do is that you're actually doing the tactical thing, and you're also trying to assess what the gap is for the following year. I think one of my biggest concerns is when I talk to clients and they're so focused on that 2019 link, because there's loads of stuff out there. As PwC, we offer an Excel embedded spreadsheet where you can just add on to your work papers to submit it. But that's not the real point here. That's only getting you over one of the three hurdles. It's about seeing the bigger picture. But it's also coming back to this point around, well, actually, you've got the requirements for MTD, yeah? But this is actually going to start to challenge, have you actually set up VAT correctly in your systems? Have you got the VAT determination correct at the point of an invoice being entered into the system? Because fundamentally, you could be compliant for MTD, but you could be submitting completely the wrong information to HMRC. And so this opens up the sort of the bigger chasm as to, you know, we just need to have a look at this sort of like end-to-end process. And if we need to have a look at some of the special schemes where you have to say, right, we can only recover 50% of that, so I need to make sure that I've got tax codes or my system is able to recover 50% of it. Yes, we've got complicated partial exemption and things like that to look at, but it's really sort of highlighting this area of do you feel that your VAT process is fully reversed? If we live in a nirvana world where you could press a button on your system tomorrow and it would send the information across to the revenue, how uncomfortable or comfortable would you feel at this point? And I would say most organisations would be incredibly uncomfortable about doing something like that.
In that sense, we will feel comfortable. It's just mainly managing the exceptions.
So,
like we have the South Africa barcode, we have to enter it in the system. But when you produce the reports of the VAT, that VAT comes up, and it's because we need to have it for the South Africa VAT unit. How do we exclude this on a direct link from HMRC?
So maybe this is a very particular situation. So in your case there, is when you're extracting the information from the UK VAT return, the South African stuff's coming through as well. So it's basically, you need to be in a position where, I guess at the moment, you just split it and then put it through on your South African return or however else you're going to exclude it. I mean, NTD is just focused on the UK stuff.
Yeah.
So if you exclude some of those records and you do that within the environment, then that should be okay. But the fundamental question is, well, what's the root cause of that South African VAT hitting that particular GL code? And is the question that you need to reconfigure your underlying system so it doesn't do that? And I guess this is getting into a very sort of particular unique situation, but this is what it's starting to expose errors and manual workarounds that organisations have been living with for the last God knows how many years. The amount of places that I go into and they say, you know, I've done a lot of this stuff in the UK from an SAA point of view, so you go and you do a review of the VAT return process from report to report, and you're sat there and you're thinking, okay, well fundamentally you're getting to the right number, but there's a lot of risk in this process. So if HMRC do come out and have a look at it, they've now got another sort of trigger to come and talk to you about stuff. So it's really, I think, you know, when you look at sort of like this kind of population, some of you might be SAOs in this room, and you have a requirement to ensure that those processes continue and improve and the right level of controls are in place. And it just sort of highlights that, you know, it should be high up on the agenda to try and fix some of this stuff. And using the influence of that to change what you can upstream is really, really important, because it will just get exposed further down the line.
I'd add to that, and this is maybe more for the internationals, people in the room, both of you, three of you. If you look at the global trends and the tax audit files that are coming out, whether, you know, it doesn't matter whether it's Hungary, France, Germany, it's a very rapidly growing trend. HMRC were debating it as part of MTD. They've put it on hold. I think Brexit was coming along and, you know, they don't want to make too many changes. It will come back. That means you've almost got to do a snapshot of everything that goes into your general ledger. Once HMRC have that and the VAT return, they'll put their software on gluing it together. If you're not doing the analysis in your primary financial records, it will show up at that point very clearly that they must be manual intervention. And that is a future risk that you can design for today when you build for MTD. Assume that HMRC can at any point get a snapshot of your ledger and your VAT return and be confident that the two will tie together. You then sleep easily. Now, it's a long journey to get there, but it's a journey that is being well trodden in many countries. Software, particularly international software, is building for that. Consultancy firms, whether they're big like the PwC, etc., or smaller, most of them are gaining experience of helping clients through that sort of preparation and transforming their systems. So if you think of that as the goal, then I think it becomes a lot easier. I don't know if you disagree or...
So you're saying like partial exemption calculations, for example, which we do outside at the moment. No, that's what we've done in the system.
So I was talking to the Association of UK Cathedrals a few months ago. They're very interesting because they're all partial exemptions. They've actually got particular statutory exemptions as well for cathedrals, but it only applies to the religious buildings, irrespective of the charitable buildings, etc. And HMRC were there, and what they were basically suggesting is anything that might need splitting out, put it into a separate nominal code. Treat it as another VAT controlled account. And then you can analyse those out, and you've got a very clear, easy audit trail. We extracted it out into a spreadsheet. We know the total amount of taxable turnover and exempt turnover. This is now a back-of-the-envelope calculation. Okay, I've put it on a spreadsheet, but it's almost trivial. Well, it is trivial to those of us.
But that's fine, just do that in the spreadsheet
It is.
and then put it back in.
Because that is one of the ones that you do not need to... If the VAT Act doesn't specify you've got to have transaction-level records, then you don't need them. And if you look at the VAT notice, I can't remember the number of it, shame on me, then it actually lists out what you've got to have at transaction level. And if it's not specified, then you can do it at a summary level, but it's still got to be electronic. And treat that as your primary record, and from there on, it's got to have these digital links.
But the point you were saying earlier on, you were saying spreadsheets, like, we won't be able to use spreadsheets in a couple of years' time.
HMRC, well, what HMRC have indicated they'll probably go down is they'll specify what functional software means, and that's their term. And it will mean that you've got to have automation, you've got to... prompts and nudges is their term, but it's basically designed that it's got to suggest when you might be entering numbers that are wrong, negative values into positive cells, etc. If you only have UK business, why are you claiming for your inter-community sales or purchase? So there'll be a number of guidances from there. But it's also got to be version control and auditability, which everything that runs on a spreadsheet, on a database has. Everything that runs on a spreadsheet, if somebody manually overkeys a cell, how do you ever recover back from that or even know that there's been that error? And I mean, back when I was doing practice, the number of times that you'd find that, oops, somebody overkeyed a value, and then you have to work back and hope that you can work it out. HMRC are trying to eliminate that.
One of the things that we're seeing, just while we talk about, I guess, partial exemption and spreadsheets, one of the things that I'm seeing on the market at the moment is notoriously, if you just look at sort of VAT compliance software rather than sort of like accounting software, it's actually been very, very bad at handling partial exemption before. And it's one of the reasons why, particularly the FS industry, have always really struggled with purchasing compliance software. But what this has led to is that they feel that there's a journey going in the right direction, that the typical sort of the tax technology vendors are having to create products that meet partial exemption. But what it's also led to is that the Big Four are starting to get involved in developing some software around partial exemption. So, for example, PwC's policy is not to make technology. We're here to be advisors. But fundamentally, if there's a gap in the market for some of our clients that we feel a product is not offering the right answer for them, we look to develop something. And because of that, all of the Big Four are developing partial exemption calculation tools to be able to support that. So it helps when, if you look sort of, if you try to ignore for sort of the next couple of years, is that the right answer for all clients, for certain clients? And the question is fundamentally, you have to look at your profile. It's fundamentally, if you can do it within your ERP environment, if you've got a single source of truth, if you get comfortable with it, that's great. As soon as you get a little bit more complicated, what is the right answer. And that will very much depend on your organisation's appetite and whether you just want to manage the initial hurdle or if you just want to look at the big picture. So one of the things we are seeing is softwares being able to have to handle partial exemption from the calculation perspective.
Any more questions? I think that was a great question. I think it led to a lot of other discussions. Any other questions?
From the U.S., we have little to do with MPD or VAT or anything like that. So, but this is really a conversation about transformation, right? Transforming your processes from manual intervention in spreadsheets to digital format. I don't think HMRC is going to be terribly concerned with, or HMRC with the journey, because they're going to assess a penalty on the destination, right? Have you met the timeline or not? So it's great that we're journeying towards that. But if you're not there in 2019 or 2020, and they're going to assess a penalty and the standards are finalized, that's a big onus on CFOs to try and meet such a stringent, rigid regulation without really knowing how to do it. So,
and are you on a journey yourselves as an organisation generally to digitise your finance?
In the U.S., yes, we are, and it's an ongoing process. It clearly is a journey, and you try to make incremental improvements. But when the taxing authorities, in our case, the Internal Revenue Service, the Department of Treasury, when they set the deadlines, you have to hit it. They're not concerned that you're trying your best.
No.
You have to hit it, and if you don't, then these are the consequences. So it's nice to talk about the journey and that we're making progress, but they're really concerned about the end product. Did you get there or not?
Yeah. I guess we, from the software industry, we look at, I look at this, because I'm an engineer by training, and I look at it and I say, well, we've had these systems that have this single source of truth for 20 years. Why are we still having these discussions? So it's kind of interesting from our perspective. I appreciate the challenges you have, but actually the software is there. There are systems out there, and we just need to be nudged. Everyone needs to be nudged. Say, come on, let's get off these spreadsheets. Let's actually get into some proper systems. But don't just do it for making tax digital. I was presenting to a bunch of manufacturing people the other day, and the same message to them is: don't just put a new ERP system in because you want to be able to slimline your finance function. You can actually totally transform your business. You can move to selling your products online. Let's be a bit more ambitious than just digitising our tax return. I think that's the real message from us. This is a catalyst. This is an opportunity to say, look, we cannot go on like this anymore. But let's look at all the other benefits we can get from having a full system, whoever it's from, in your business.
Yeah, I agree. The motive should be to eliminate errors and do it faster and cheaper.
Yeah.
Not for MTD.
Yeah.
Right. That's
just it's a bit of a stick from the government to do that.
I mean, there's definitely other overlapping compliance trends, and I think about compliance because that's my day job. But you've got electronic invoicing, which in Europe you've got to have if you're billing any government bodies. So if any of you provide any services or send any invoices to any European government authorities, you're pretty soon going to have to submit them electronically using a particular format. You've got the real-time reporting of VAT, which is the second trend. Luckily, not too many countries are going this route yet, but you've got the Brazilian trend of you actually got to pre-notify the tax authorities before you send an invoice and have them approve the invoice before you're actually legally able to send it. If you don't do that, then you're not legally able to enforce the debt. So you've got this create the VAT record or the sales tax record or the indirect tax record right up at the invoicing place, follow it all the way through. And if you're on the purchase side, the receiving of that invoice electronically into the system and flowing it through. And then join that with this tax audit file, SAFT, FEC, GDPDU, whatever it's called in each country. You've suddenly got this, if you haven't got one system to look at all the data, you've got an awful lot of sticky plaster that you've got to put on there.
I think we're almost out of time. Are we due to finish at 12? I think we started late, so we can probably overrun a little bit. But are there any more key questions? We've got the guys here who've clearly got a lot of knowledge. Please feel free just to get as much out of them as you possibly can when you've got the time in here. Okay, well, thank you very much for coming to the session. sitting just out there, I can assure you we do have systems that are compliant, so we'd love to talk to you about them. And we're just out there and happy to share business cards and that sort of stuff. And if you want to talk to either Adam or Ben, I'm sure they'll be happy to give you more insight into making tax digital. But thank you very much, and I hope you enjoy the rest of the conference.
Thank you.
for your time.
Thank you.